The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It is Thursday, the day before Halloween. Very excited to be here. I have part of my Witchy Poo costume on and may share my Witchy Poo hat with you later on. I hear that we may have some guests come in costume today. There's been a rumor floating around, so we'll have to see. I'm as much in the dark about it as you are. But thrilled that we're going to be with you for the next 2 hours live talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. And I want you to know that it's a privilege to be here with you. It's a privilege to be able to share your journeys and to hear from all of you. I love the questions that you guys write in. I hear the strife that some of you are experiencing, and I appreciate being able to be on this journey with you. So I want to remind you, for those of you who are not yet participating, who are not yet writing in and saying things, that's what this whole show is about. This is meant to be interactive. So Kelby's going to show you some of the different ways that you can participate, because it's not one size fits all, right? Some of you like to participate with us on our live feature, which is autism-live.com. But there are many other ways that you can participate with us. I do like the live feature, and I like to tout that because there are so many different things that you can do there. We have a blog that you can go to. You can sign up for our free newsletter, and we do not give away your addresses to other people, but it does make you eligible for all the giveaways that we're about to have starting on November 18th that I'm getting so excited about. So please sign up for our free newsletter and tell all your friends to sign up for our free newsletter. It is exactly that, free, and you have the ability to win some pretty exciting stuff during the holiday season. So anyway, but also on that live feature, you can be watching the live show. And if you, let's say you go to the live feature, you go to the website and we're not live in that moment, you can still watch the most recently recorded show or any of the shows that we've done in the past, because there's a playlist button up in the corner that you can click on and cycle through the most recent shows. Now, to the side of all that is the actual live feature. It's the series of white boxes. One of them says your question. And you can put your cursor in that spot and type and hit enter. And that's really all it takes. There is no login. Nobody is asking for your personal information. Nobody's asking for a credit card, because it's totally free and it's totally anonymous. Now, the difficult part about that is that if you want us to get back to us, you do need to include some sort of an email. And I'm a little bit behind on my emails, so I'm trying to get caught up today and tomorrow. But in any case, we hope that you will participate. We think that it's worthwhile for you guys to share your thoughts, your feelings, your concerns, your suggestions, and your questions. This is a format in which we have many experts who come in and join us, and you have the ability to ask them a question in almost real time to get an answer about some of the things that are happening. No one on the show can give you individual specific advice. No one can tell you exactly what's happening with you or with your child or with anyone else in this format. But the thing about it is there's such a huge array of things that are going on with autism, and to have a context for what's happening, I always say that, you know, if you're not asking the right question, you're not going to get the right answer. And sometimes this format helps us to know which questions to ask. Can really streamline and make effective your time with the experts that you are with. And I always remind you at the start of the show that we do have a wide array of experts that are on the show, and I'm so grateful for that. I learn along with you from them, but I'm not one of the experts. That doesn't mean I don't have an opinion about everything. I wrote an email to somebody today and I said, you know, you can always count on me for an an opinion. It's very rare that I don't have an opinion. And I said, oh, my poor husband. But, you know, you can certainly pick my brain for things. I have been on this journey for, you know, just a soupçon period of time compared to some of the rest of you. My son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, and I'm a former teacher, so I know a little bit about dealing with behaviors in the classroom and that kind of stuff. And I know a lot about what it was like for me with my child and what I went through as a parent. So I have that context to share with you. My son is now 11, and he's doing so well, and I'm so proud of him, and he's growing into such a wonderful young man. That doesn't mean that we don't face difficulties. Oh, no. We have our own little battles that we have with different things going on, and we have ways that I don't do the things that I'm supposed to do. So again, I'm learning, but I'm happy to weigh in and tell you guys. I know somebody has written a question about what other things are we still doing, and I'm going to answer that today, I promise. It's taken me all week to get to it, but I'm going to. But in any case, I'm not an expert. I'm a student on this path. I learned from you, and I learned from our experts, and that's a really wonderful space to be in. It's a privilege to be here, honestly. I'm so grateful to be here. So having said all that, though, you must remember at all times, not an expert. I sound so sure of myself a lot of the times that people assume that I am sure of myself. That is so not the case. That is so not the case. I have as many questions as everybody else. But together, we hold hands. Together, we get through the things that we need to get through today. We don't borrow trouble worrying about 7 years from now. But we get through what we need to get through today to get to that good progress. That's really what I'm all about, helping all of us to get to the good progress, because I know firsthand it's sweet. Sweet. Okay, so in any case, we like to start every morning with something that we fondly refer to as the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to figure out, what are they talking about? What on earth do they mean by this? Sometimes it's just like these random. I wrote down yesterday, if you were watching when Dr. Grandpichet was here, she said a new thing that I'd never heard before. She said, oh, that's the PREMAC principle. And I immediately took out my pen and was writing it down. We have new jargon. I'll share that in another couple of weeks. But the PREMAC principle, never heard of it before. And I have no idea, you know, it doesn't sound like anything to me, but sometimes the terms, like today, that we're talking about, it's a term that we use in other aspects of our life, and suddenly they apply it to autism. And if we take our preconceived notions of what it means in other areas of our life, we can be in a little bit of trouble, right? So we want to define these things. So what is mastery when we're talking about autism and putting this in the world of the context of ABA, applied behavior analysis? First, we give you an actual definition, and our actual definition, mastery, the point at which the child is said to have successfully acquired the target behavior, determined by previously established criteria. Okay, but since so many things in this sentence are not defined, I'm really no closer to knowing what are we talking when we talk about mastery. So let's go on to our working definition. Working definition of mastery is when the child is independently demonstrating the desired skill at the desired level. All right, why is this definition so slippery? Because for different tasks, we're going to set the criteria for mastery at different levels. What? What does this mean? Mastery should be mastery, right? Except it's not. Stop and consider all the things all the behaviors that you engage in a certain day and where you are with them. I always like to use the example of keys. I consider myself someone who has mastered the fine art of using a key. I can, you know, open a lock. I know how to get in my front door. I know how to get into my car. I've achieved mastery with keys. Does that mean that I never drop my keys? That I never stick a key in a door and can't get it to work? Oh no, my friends, it does not. Because quite often I have a little bit of difficulty with a key for whatever reason. I don't jiggle it just right. I don't know. But probably between 80 and 90% of the time, I can use a key and I'm just fine and I don't drop it. So we're not going to send me back to a class and do remedial how to use a key, right? Because I get it most of the time. But the truth is there are very few things in life that we all do perfectly every single time we do it. Very few things in life. As well as the fact that there are very few things in life that we need to have that level of mastery at. You know, when I think about sticking 2 pieces of gluten-free bread into the toaster, most of the time I can get them in the toaster, but occasionally one decides it doesn't want to quite go in and I gotta finesse it, right? But I can live my life productively. I don't get to the point of frustration. I'm not constantly standing there in front of my toaster going, ugh, right? So I'm at mastery. But would that be the same criteria that I would use for driving my car on the freeway? Probably not. And it for sure wouldn't be the same mastery criteria that I would use in crossing the street and looking both ways. When we have safety kinds of things, we want to get that criteria of doing it right to 100% before we remove all the other things that we're doing with any child. You know, for my friends who have neurotypical children and they're 3 and 4 years old, they're not letting their kids cross the street because they have not achieved 100% mastery in looking both ways and knowing exactly how to be safe in all circumstances. They haven't. It's not age appropriate for them to have been that place, to have gotten to that level of mastery. So we don't remove all the support that we have. And that's for neurotypical kids. Imagine for our kids who are on the autism spectrum, who we know are going to take that much more practice to be able to do something. So when we're teaching something, we want to know how long we're going to teach it and when we're going to know when we got there. And this is true of anybody teaching anything to anyone. If you say to yourself, okay, I want to learn how to knit, and there should be at least, if we want to be really successful at teaching you how to knit, there should at least be an expectation in our head of how well do I want to knit? Do I want to knit well enough to be able to make one of those 1-hour scarves that everybody is wearing? Or do I want to be able to knit well enough to make my sister a cable knit sweater that looks like it came from Ireland? Because I'm going to attack this lesson in a different way if I know what my expectations are. Now, here's the fun part about mastery. Sometimes we change our minds, and that's okay. But before we start to teach anything, we should know, what are we going for? If I know that I'm going to teach myself or someone else how to knit just enough to make a 1-hour scarf, I'm not going to start talking about purl stitches and gauging and making sure that, I'm not going to get into all of that. I'm going to teach the person or myself how to cast on and how to do a simple knit stitch. And that's what I'm going to focus on. If I know that it's absolutely essential that this person has it in them, that they want to learn how to be a master knitter, I might start in saying, okay, there's 2 different types of stitches. There's a knit and a purl stitch. We're going to start with the knit stitch, but eventually I'm going to show you how to do the purl stitch, whatever it is, right? And I'm going to teach it in a different way. And that's why knowing what your mastery criteria is important before you begin teaching something. If I'm going to teach safety to a child, I have to know that what I'm going for is 100% of the time that the child is 100% right before I'm done. It's going to give me a level of patience in teaching it, that I'm going to know this is going to take a while. This is not a quick fix, and I have a lot of things to cover, and I want to cover it in a lot of different ways so that eventually they not only learn this information, but that they generalize it in all circumstances, right? Very, very important that we set that criteria beforehand, but very important that we don't decide that it's written in stone. For a lot of lessons, like if there's a generic sort of almost one-size-fits-all mastery criteria, it would be that the individual can do it 80% of the time across a minimum of 2 sessions at different times in different situations with different people. So if I'm trying to teach a child the letter B, And I've worked with them in the morning, and I ran a trial, a set of 10 trials, and 80% of the time they knew that it was the letter B, but one of the different out of the 10 trials, they said it was a C, and another time they said it was a D. That means they got it wrong 2 out of 10 times, but 8 out of 10 times they got it right that it was a B. Okay, so that's pretty good. And then if the next day somebody else runs the program in a different way with the child, with different stimulus, the B looks a little bit different, and it was a different time of day, and the child still got 80%, I might consider that mastered for now and say, okay, that's mastered, I'm gonna move on to something else. I could discover that even on that second day when the child does it, that they still don't have the B. They just don't have the B. And so I might go, you know, I don't think 80% across 2 trials is going to do it. I think I really want to get it 90% across 4 trials. You always have the ability to change the mastery criteria. The mastery criteria does not drive when you stop teaching the lesson. It drives how you begin to teach the lesson. And then we'll always have the ability to change the mastery criteria. We're going to have Dr. Najdowski talk about this and why we might want to change the mastery criteria and some of the things that happen, because this is a really confusing concept. But I just want you to know that we want to get to mastery, because mastery is one step along the way to get to generalization. Generalization is the goal, but we get there through mastery. Don't let mastery decide things for you, but don't start teaching without knowing some idea where you want to go. Mastery is like the map, but sometimes you're going to off-road it. All right, moving on, as if I haven't confused you guys enough. Dr. Najdowski is going to shed better light on it. I trust her to do that for us. Okay, we always have a question of the day, and our question for you guys today, it's like I can't speak today. What services or funding have you gotten that has been really helpful? So we said the other day we want to know what drives you crazy because it just doesn't make sense. I want to know what has actually worked for you. It's so good to name it when you've had something that's been really, really incredible. I have to say that we have a system here in California, and it may not be perfect. And it can be often very difficult to navigate. But I am incredibly grateful to live in the great state of California, and I'm incredibly grateful that when my son needed ABA, we had something called, when we still have, something called a regional center, and yes, for my son's ABA therapy. Hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of therapy that they paid for. And I know that they did that because it made sense to the state of California, that they believe in our kids, they have seen why ABA works, and they know that they could spend $200,000 on a child when they are between the ages of 3 and 6, and that child will be a productive member of society who goes on to do things that are worthwhile and meaningful to all of society. Or they could choose not to spend that, say, $200,000 on the child, and that child across their life will cost the state more than $2.3 million on average in care and support for them to be able to live a life that is more restricted, and is not as productive and not as fulfilling for them. And I salute the great state of California for having recognized that difference. I find it unfortunate that financial times have happened so that the state is no longer able to support families in that way, and that is of grave disappointment to me. I'm glad that we passed an insurance mandate so that now the insurance companies pick up that cost, because to be honest, it should have been them to begin with. This is a medical issue for our children, and insurance companies are responsible for paying for meaningful therapies when it is a medical issue. But I thank the great state of California and the regional center system for recognizing the value in my child and doing something that made sense. So now is your opportunity to name and claim what has made sense in your life that has worked for you. Now, we always have a topic for the week, and as you guys know at this point, our topic is is doing what makes sense. And a lot of times we're met on this journey with people who are not doing what makes sense. And that can be maddening. It's so frustrating. But we must remember that we need to set the bar ourselves first and demonstrate how to do what makes sense. So we're talking about that this week, how we can do what makes sense and how we can encourage others to do what makes sense. Now, to that end, some of the different things that we have on the show this morning, Dr. Adel Najdowski is going to be with us. We call that segment Real Progress. She's going to be talking with us about mastery and then answering some of the questions that you guys have written in. We have some autism news for you. And then in the second hour, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox is going to be here, and he is going to really dig in and answer questions that you guys have sent. So, and we may have some Halloween surprises from what I hear the rumor mill has said. I look forward to that. So stick with us. We're going to be right back after these messages.
Riley has high-functioning autism, and I'd say I noticed somewhere between 9 months and a year. Looking back now, I can tell you everything. I mean, there was no pointing, there was no shared experiences, speech was not coming, the interactive play was not coming, those things weren't happening. You know, you go to the pediatrician, they tell you, well, sometimes boys are slow or things might take a while to come along, but it still wasn't happening. And right when he hit the 2-year-old room in preschool is when the wheels fell off the wagon. That's when we got some intervention. That's when we figured out, you know, how are we going to address this problem. The first thing I did was I got a mentor, because there's no book on what to do with your autistic child. I mean, there's many books, but each path is individual. So I got a mentor, a really nice woman named Marlene. She has a daughter with Asperger's, and she told me, go to a psychiatrist so you can have your child fully diagnosed and a rock-solid diagnosis that can't really be attacked. Call CARD and do whatever they tell you to do. That was probably the thing she talked about the most. Get in touch with CARD. And she actually put me in touch with Evelyn from CARD. And calling CARD was like amazing, because I really felt like things were finally going to be okay. We were going to get the help we needed.
We tried a number of different things before we could get into CARD, and you could really see the difference in the data keeping, really addressing what his issues were, whereas the other places we had been, it seemed pointless to me.
We've talked about this, and I feel like we met a lot of really nice, well-intentioned people.
Right.
And then when we got to CARD, we met a lot of really nice people who could help us because they had the experience. It was ABA, which I think is the only way to go with your child if you're trying to overcome autism. And if you go to CARD, the people are so qualified, and there's so much of a database on how to approach this. It's just like they come right in, and we started off with, let's have Riley sit down for 2 seconds, because he couldn't even get that. And we worked on baby steps until now he's in 1st grade and he's working at grade level. So it just starts with baby steps, and it keeps working on, because they have a way to approach every single problem, every single tantrum, every single thing you're going to come up with. They have a way to approach it and help you get through it.
Yeah, I'm always amazed, like at our clinic, we'll be having a specific problem, and how good they are, all of them, the therapist and your team leader, at coming up with a solution, something to try, and it almost always works. Whatever the particular behavior you're trying to deal with, they're really good at them. They know the answers.
He likes a lot of stuff, I think, regular 7-year-olds like. He likes to swim.
He loves to swim.
He's a fish. Likes to ride a scooter, loves Toy Story, loves playing on the iPad.
Loves Justin Bieber.
Good job, buddy.
High five.
High five.
High five.
Yeah.
CARD's been good about encouraging us to do things that maybe wouldn't occur to us, like him learning to ride a bike was really them saying, hey, it's time, let's do this, and helping us do that, so he can ride a bike. He's still working on the brakes a little bit, but you know, he can pedal a bike. We can go to Balboa Park and he'll ride happy as a clam along the bike path.
If you think something's wrong, it's not about you. Don't bury your head in the sand. go get help, because the help is out there to make your life and your child's life just so much better. And if you're lucky enough to get in with CARD, I can't even tell you what a difference it's made in our lives. From 4 years ago, just the quality of life we have, the quality of life Riley has, the progress he's made from being a child who wanted to stay in his room and play Toy Story and line up his Toy Story dolls all day, to a first grader who's working at grade level. It couldn't have happened without CARD intervention, without ABA, and without all the wonderful people we met there.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm here underneath, I'm still here, wearing my witchy poo hat because we're really celebrating Halloween this week and getting in the spirit of things for our kids and for ourselves. And we have Dr. Adel Najdowski with us, but you will see that she does not look like Dr. Adel Najdowski. Your whole office is dressing as spooky animals, is this correct? Yes. And so this is our spooky zebra. It's pretty amazing. And I love it. I love that one of the things that I love about working with people who work with kids is that you all still have a sense of play that is wonderful and that we should all have. I'm going to take this hat off so that they can actually see me, and I'll put it back on later. But I think that this is true of most people who work with kids, that you retain a joy of playing and doing different things. And you guys model it for the kids, and I think it's wonderful. Our kids really enjoy it when we dress up. I forget that all the time. But my son got such a kick out of me dressing as the Queen the other day and was thrilled that I had my witchy poo hat on today. They get a kick out of it. So thank you for coming and being in costume and participating for us.
You're welcome.
It's going to put an interesting spin on the things that we talk about today, isn't it?
Hopefully you can take me seriously today.
Yeah, so it looks really good on camera, too. You did an amazing job on the makeup. Did you do it yourself?
I did do it myself, and it took a lot longer than I was thinking.
Yeah, can you imagine?
But at least it came out. I had ideas of maybe I would just fail completely and not be able to wear it.
You're rocking it. You're rocking it. But can you imagine what it's like to be the people in KISS? The band KISS, and how put that level of makeup on every night that they perform.
I think I could wear this as a KISS.
You absolutely could. You look like you could be, you could be a girl in the band. But in any case, thank you for being here on this day before Halloween, and thank you for your appropriate attire. We appreciate it. The kids will enjoy it. Okay, so we had said that we were going to talk a little bit about mastery, and for those of you who don't know, if you're just joining us, Dr. Najdowski, but despite her fun makeup, is a board-certified behavior analyst, and she is an amazing doctor in this field with so much knowledge and information, works with individuals who are on the autism spectrum, and enlightens us all on a weekly basis of how we can get to real progress. She is one of the co-creators of Skills, which we talk about here on the show, and you're still a very young woman, but you've accomplished a great deal, and you help our community in untold ways. So great person for us to pick her brain. And I mentioned earlier our jargon of the day is the term mastery. And it's overwhelming to parents, this concept of mastery, about when has a child reached mastery, how do you set mastery criteria, what do you do when you've set the mastery criteria at a certain level and the child has reached it but you know they haven't learned it, or the opposite, the child hasn't reached the mastery criteria but you know that they know it. All those different things. Mastery to me is just one of those slippery concepts. And you had mentioned to me that over the years you've come to a different understanding of mastery.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when I first started out, I remember, we would have targets that we would introduce within different lessons and concepts that we were teaching, and we would have a mastery criterion. Let's say maybe the child has to get 80 to 100% correct across 3 sessions, and maybe across, at least 2 different days with 2 different therapists or something like that.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes that's what mastery criteria are written out as. You can change the percentages, you can make them higher, so safety awareness kind of things. We don't ever want a kid to be 80% correct when they're crossing the street,
Right.
So we would set it to 100%. And with some kids, you might not require 3 sessions, but 2, or you might require the very first trial always to be correct. Because sometimes what we do is we actually present an instruction, the child actually responds incorrectly, so then on the next, we mark that as an incorrect. On the next one, we then prompt, and the child can then end up getting still 80%
Right.
if they get all the rest correct.
But the truth is, if we hadn't prompted them, they wouldn't have gotten it. So that's not true mastery.
Right.
Okay.
So some people will put into their mastery criterion, like if they see that pattern in a particular learner, they'll put into their mastery criterion, first trial must also be correct. And for this reason, it's very interesting. There's a whole group of people out there who do what they call cold probe data.
Uh-huh.
And this is where they don't even collect data on all the trials. They only collect data on the very first trial. They still do many more trials, but they don't
Okay.
continue to collect the data. And the idea behind it is that they call it a cold probe because it's the very first time that you work on that skill when you haven't worked on it previously for
Right.
a day or a session or whatever.
Okay.
And you're getting the child's ability to do that right there in that moment without any prompting that's happening.
Okay.
And the idea behind it is it's easier to collect the data and everything else.
It's
Interestingly,
less time intensive in terms of if you're,
Yeah.
if you're having to write down what the response was on 10 different responses, that takes much more time than just writing it down on the first one.
Yeah. But here's the thing that if you require your therapist to write down all the data, you actually have data on them and their
Yes.
behavior.
Yeah.
So if we just say go ahead and take data on the first one, we don't really necessarily know what the therapists are doing for the rest of the session. They can tell us that they're continuing to run more, but we just don't really know if they're not collecting continuous data.
Right.
So that's one of the cons, I would say, against doing that. But there is some research out there, including a study that I authored on looking at the difference between the first trial versus all trials. And some of the research shows that there was really no difference.
Okay.
But I think more studies have been coming out lately, and some of the results are a little mixed. So
Okay.
anyway.
So when you set mastery criteria, which way are you doing it now? Are you still taking the data on the 10, or are you taking it just on the first one?
So I don't have like a specified number of trials that I require, but at least it's got to be more than one, and it's got to be continuous data collection. So we still do continuous data collection.
Okay.
One of the reasons why we do that actually too is because we just started collecting data on our iPads using Skills Logbook, and that actually has that set up.
Okay.
So maybe eventually, well actually we could do first trial data collection because you can end the trial set whenever you want.
Okay.
But for the most part, I just have them do continuous data collection.
Okay. So if a parent were out there and they're actually running the session, I think one of the hardest things for parents, because it's one of the hardest things for me, I understand and appreciate why we take data, but making it work, I swear that it's like a magic trick that you guys do. You sit down with a child and you sprout octopi arms and you have 2 arms that are keeping the child back on track and soothing them and doing whatever and keeping their attention, and then you have 2 other arms that are switching the stimuli around, and you have 2 other arms that are taking data, and you have 2 extra arms that are left to do whatever else needs to be done, like set a timer or whatever. It's amazing to me because I literally, and you guys move so quickly, and you have such a fluency with it because you do it day in, day out with multitudes of children. And as parents, especially in the beginning, I still am not at the point where I can do that. I don't know how you guys do that.
It's just like anything else. You learn as you go and you get better as you go. So like right now that we're starting this iPad data collection system, all of the therapists that I work with are complaining to me saying like, I'm so much, I can't do this. I'm slower. I feel like I'm not getting through as many lessons. And that was like day 1. And then I said, I know, but it's like anything else. You're going to learn and you're going to get better.
Yeah.
And then a week later, one of them came to me and was like, yeah, it's no problem now.
Yeah, and it probably ultimately is faster, but you have to get used to it.
Well, the best part about it is that at the end of the session, they used to spend 15 minutes graphing the data by hand.
Yeah.
So that I would have graphs I could look at. But now Skills just graphs it all.
Yeah.
And it also sends alerts to me to tell me these items have met your mastery criterion. So I can set the mastery criterion that I want, and then I get alerts so I can see what has been mastered. But you were asking, how do parents collect data and how do they manage to do all this? And I would say maybe they don't need to collect data on every single thing that they do.
So for them,
the cold
maybe...
probe might be the most effective for them. I'm a huge advocate for make it very simple for the parents if you expect them to actually do it.
Absolutely. Well, we like that. We appreciate that.
Putting too much on them is going to mean that the likelihood that it's going to be done is going to be less.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely
so make it simple, make it easy, come up with something that's very straightforward, doesn't require a lot of training and all that to get parents to do it.
And I was making the case that we want to set the mastery criterion before we begin teaching, but that that it's perfectly okay to change the mastery criterion after you've started teaching if you see that it's not set properly. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, that's totally fine to do. You just adjust like anything else to what's going to be the best snapshot of how your learner's doing. If you realize that it's not really the case that they got it when you set it at a certain level, then you can change it. You can make it more stringent. You might start to realize that they can do it, but not when you're doing it across, a different setting or with different people or things like that.
Yeah. It was so interesting to me that when you're a card client, you have a clinic every 2 weeks usually, in most cases, where the whole team gets together and the parents are supposed to be there too, and early on the child is there too, and people get to run programs in front of you with the child, and you can ask questions, and the supervisor asks questions, and we would always go through, and you would hear the mastery criteria that our supervisor would say, what's happening with this lesson? And and she would be looking at the graphs and people would be talking about the graphs, and it was always fascinating to me because there were times when they would say, well, he's reached the mastery criterion, but he's still having trouble with X, Y, and Z. And then it wasn't like they said, well, he's met the mastery criterion, so we're done. It was, let's adjust and let's go in and look at why are we not to the point where he knows how to do this. And the opposite would happen too, where there were times when I would sit there and say, he knows that. He absolutely knows that. I know that it's not showing up on the graph, but he knows that. And then the supervisor would go in and test to see, and she would say, yeah, he knows that. Let's move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And it would speed up our progress.
Well, in some cases, kids literally get bored. So if you're doing something where you're requiring like 10 trials or whatever, and they've got to get 80 or 90% correct, they might attend on the first couple of trials and then be like, this is boring, I'm not into this anymore, and so you lose their attention.
Yeah.
So you readjust that as well. Like I've actually seen some learners where we'll say, don't run more than 3 of something.
If they're getting them
and move
all
on to something else and then come back later and collect more data on that because they won't pay attention.
Yeah.
And some of them will even play games with you.
Yeah.
Well, they'll, think it's funny to respond incorrectly.
I used to love when we would have newer therapists that would come in and they would be running something and Jem would say, you didn't do that right. And he would point to the paper and he would say, you're supposed to mark this, or you're supposed to ask me this, or you're not supposed to ask that yet, and tell them how to do their jobs. That's would always crack me up.
So I haven't gotten to the thing that we talked about, which was what I discovered.
Oh, what have you discovered?
About mastery. So, like I said, back when I first started, it was introduce target, get it to a certain level, and consider it mastered.
Okay.
But what I've realized is that you cannot consider a skill mastered until you have generalization. To me, that is mastery. I don't define mastery as 100%, 90, 80, whatever percent correct across certain settings and people. If there is no generalization to new stimuli, then they don't get it.
Okay.
Okay, so we don't say, he's got this, we're moving on. Because basically, in that case, you're teaching rote memorization. So what we do a lot of times is we're collecting data on our targets, and then each session we're probing new targets that are upcoming. And as soon as we see that those pop up to that level as well without direct training, then we say this is mastered.
So, okay, because now we're going to go into jargon land. Everybody fasten your seatbelts. Because my thought always was that when you would mass trial something, and when you moved into random rotation with something, it was when you would achieve mastery but not generalization. Are you still doing that? Or you wait for generalization to move it into random rotation?
Oh, thanks for asking that. So because of what we're used to, we'll still say, oh, that one's mastered or whatever. But I won't take that activity out and put it into a maintenance schedule or say, we don't need to work on this formally anymore because this kid totally gets this concept until new targets are showing generalization.
I like that.
Meaning that I don't have to directly train or teach them.
Okay.
So I'll keep introducing more and more exemplars until I get generalization to new ones that have never been trained. Once that happens, I'm done with this activity. It goes into the maintenance.
Okay, now I wish that I could see a show of hands of who followed the jargon, right, amongst you, because those are all terms that we use, except I still have not put exemplar in the jargon because I hate it so much.
Target.
Okay.
Target.
Well, and even that, the thing that we're trying to teach. Because remember, like for instance, if we're trying to teach colors, right, we're not just going to teach red. Red is one target or one exemplar. Blue is another exemplar or target, and green is another one, and blue, green, and turquoise, and pink, and purple are all targets that are all under the heading of
But
teaching
notice those
colors.
are totally different ones. It's not like if I teach red, I'm going to get generalization and kids going to learn blue, yellow, and purple, because they are nothing like red.
Right.
So in this example, the generalization would be to different shades of red.
Exactly.
Okay? But if I'm teaching imitation, then when I say to a child, do this, and I do an action, and I have to teach each individual one, I don't say, oh, well, I taught the 10, he needs to know, he totally gets this, it's mastered, and say, okay, I don't need to work on this anymore. No, I have to keep going until I introduce something new and he gets it on his own.
Right, and more than one thing probably.
Right, and then the same thing goes with like cause and effect or some of these other bigger concepts that we start to teach. They learn concepts, and when you start to introduce new ones, like sarcasm.
Yeah.
You teach the idea of sarcasm. Sarcasm is when someone says the opposite of what is actually occurring.
When I go, oh, that's great, and what I mean is that stinks.
You mean the opposite.
Right.
So you teach that type of rule.
I am the queen of sarcasm, by the way.
Oh, I know. So you teach that rule, and then you start embedding sarcastic statements here or there into things, and maybe they learn like a few different ones, and so you say, oh yeah, great, they got that mastered. I would not say that that skill of understanding sarcasm is mastered until in new environments, with new people, with new sarcastic statements, they get it.
Right.
As soon as that's occurring, that's generalization, that's true mastery of that entire skill.
And then what happens with that lesson is we don't kiss it goodbye entirely, but we move it over.
It goes to the maintenance pile.
Yes, there's a pile, whether it's virtually on your iPad or in a binder, that's your maintenance file that will cycle back into those lessons from time to time, but we don't need to put as much energy into them because the child demonstrates that they have these things.
Yeah, so what maintenance really means is that once a child's learned something, that it maintains over time. They don't just forget everything they learned.
Right.
So, you know, when we went to school, we would learn math concepts or French or Spanish or whatever, and then over time that doesn't retain.
Right.
So because if we would have practiced, if we would have put it on a maintenance schedule, and we would have actually practiced the languages that we learned in school, we'd probably still be able to do them.
And so that maintenance binder or folder or area on your computer, it's stuff that doesn't go away entirely, but it's stuff that we want to cycle back through from time to time. And when we cycle back through that maintenance file or folder, we see that the child's skills level has slipped, we put it back into the regular rotation with the other lessons.
If it needs to be done more often, then yeah, we would do that.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when we put something into the maintenance schedule, we might say, we want you to work on this 3 times a week, just so they continue to get practice. And as long as that's going fine, we might drop to 2 times a week, and then to 1 time a week, and then maybe once a week, and then, you know, like that.
Yeah. I'm on a bandwagon right now, and I'd love your opinion for it, that we hear from a lot of parents, whether they're card parents or parents with other ABA providers, that, you know, everybody's having different therapists come to their door at different times. It's, you know, exhausting for everybody, the schedule that happens with ABA therapists, and then things happen. A therapist gets pregnant, or a therapist gets married, or a therapist goes off to graduate school, or they decide to, you know, go be an au pair in Australia, or, you know, they just decide that they're, you know, they've done this all the way through college and now they're going to go be a teacher or whatever. People move on, or they get sick and they miss a session, or they have a flat tire, or they get in a car accident. Stuff happens.
Yeah.
And the person who's supposed to be at your door at 2:15, you know, calls at 1 o'clock and says to the main office, I'm not going to be able to make it. And then the office, because they know that the hours that your child needs therapy, knows that's important. And so they try to send someone else to fill in for that time, like a substitute teacher.
Yeah.
And nobody likes a substitute teacher, and parents don't like to get a fill-in, but more and more parents are writing in saying, I don't want to waste that time, so they cancel the session. I personally feel that this is the wrong thing to do. I've been saying to parents what we used to do, and what I want to encourage so many parents to do, and what I want to encourage all ABA providers to do, is that's an ideal day to work on the maintenance folder. It's things that the kids already have mastered, so you're not going to run into problem behaviors. They can play games and work on the maintenance folder. It's useful time. It's a time for your child to get used to another person and the way they talk and the way they roll, which works towards your child's generalization. I think it's a brilliant way of doing it, but what do you think about that idea?
Well, obviously, you know, when we're teaching kids skills, we're hoping that they're going to be used in different settings and in the presence of all sorts of people, and they're not going to be only under the control of the couple people that teach them.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a perfect opportunity for them to be able to practice those skills with new people. So I think for generalization purposes, and I didn't even think about maintenance, what a great idea. But for generalization, that was the first thing that came to mind for me.
Yeah, but a lot of people, and I know why some of the trepidation. I can think of one particular day when somebody started working on something with my son, and they had just a way of doing it, and they didn't understand that he had difficulty. They didn't tread lightly the way the other therapists were doing, and we got into a sticky wicket. And I really afterwards was like, oh, I don't want to have people come in who don't know him and work on this particular lesson. But so what I started doing when people would come through the doors, I would say, here's what's off limits. Here's what I want you to work on. This is where I need to have people who know him for this moment in time, but this stuff, work on with him. He needs it.
Yeah.
I want to empower parents to have that conversation when people come in the door, but don't give up your hours. You're not going to get them back. It's not like they're being stored in a bank someplace where you're going to come back for them. It's not happening. Use your hours. Use them on the days that they're scheduled. Take the fill-ins. You will meet some amazing, amazing fill-ins. We had a fill-in that was Amy Fuentes, and she is the Mary Poppins of fill-ins. And if I had said no to her, I'm serious, she comes with a bag of goodies, and she has toys, and she opens them up, and is amazing. And because she came for a fill-in, I then called the office and said, who is this woman and how soon can we have her on our case? And it took over a year, but eventually she was on our case. And that's what happens when you have fill-ins and people who know how to do fill-ins. So don't say no to those appointments. It makes me cry. It's wasted time. Use it well.
Yeah.
All right. We've gone a really long time without taking a break. I want to take a break, and then I want to have Dr. Najdowski answer at least one of the questions that you guys have written in, so stick with us.
Hi guys, welcome back to Smarty. This month we're going to be creating our very own Any Animal mask. As we work on this activity, you'll notice that these icons will pop up. These icons tell you important information about what skills we're using to create this craft and how to find them on Skills. Skills is an ABA-based online program that helps parents create individualized programs for their children on the autism spectrum. If you're a Skills user, this will make the most out of this artful and educational activity. Well, let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are glue, scissors, hole puncher, markers or crayons, pipe cleaners, and the template. So step one, you're gonna go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/autism-live, and you're gonna print out the templates that you see there. Once your templates are printed out, then you're gonna take your scissors and cut them all out. Now that you're finished cutting out all the templates, you're gonna have several different shapes. This is because this will give you a variety of different features you can use to make different kinds of animals. So this is the fun part. You're gonna take these templates and arrange them into any kind of animal you can think of. Use your imagination. There is no wrong answer. Once you figured out the animal that you're gonna want to make, take out your glue and glue them onto the mask. Once that's been finished, then you're going to take your markers and crayons and decorate it, drawing in the features a little bit clearly and just making it as colorful as you'd like it to be. For the owl that I made, I had to cut out some more holes through it Once your animal mask is done being decorated, you're going to use your hole puncher to make holes on the side so you can fasten it to your face. Then you're going to take your pipe cleaners, throw them through the holes, and then voila, your mask is ready to go. Well, I hope you enjoyed this activity with me. Until next time, guys, craft on. To find more about Skills and to access all of the lessons you saw in today's Smarty, visit skillsforautism.com and click on the parent icon. Skills, the online autism solution.
Welcome back to Autism Live and to a segment that we call Real Progress with Dr. Adel. Dr. Adel Najdowski is here with us. She is in full-on costume. She is our spooky zebra for today. I just said to her, your eyes are so intense with this makeup on. It's awesome. We love that you're participating in our Halloween with us. We got some questions that have come in from individuals. I'm going to start with one. I think this is only the second or third time that we've specifically had somebody pose a question and say that this is for a neurotypical child, but I gotta say, I kind of love that people are starting to understand that ABA is not just for individuals who are on the autism spectrum. This works on everybody. So I really love it that you're asking this question. How can we help a 7-year-old neurotypical child learn to not tell other people they're not nice or not their friend when she doesn't get her way? This creates hurt feelings and lost friendships. At the moment, she is upset and cannot control herself. Afterwards, she understands that she hurt other people with her words, and they said thank you for answering. So what do we do? And I would imagine that it's very similar to what we would do with children who are on the spectrum, but it may be quicker, the outcome, I'm guessing, when it's a child who's neurotypical, and I shouldn't assume that.
Well, it's kind of funny because that particular behavior is really common and pretty normal. Like, that's what kids do when they don't get their way, when they're younger. My daughter's 6, similar age.
Yeah.
They just straight up say, I'm not your friend anymore.
Yeah.
And that's just that. I remember that when I was that age.
Saying that or having people say that to you? Or both?
I don't know who said it, but I remember going through it.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
It might have been one person said it to me once, and then I started using it back. It just becomes like a thing you learn from your peers, and you all start doing it.
I think especially among the girl community, everybody gets it very early. I remember girls saying this to each other in Jem's kindergarten class, that they get it very quickly, the girls do, that's a powerful statement. I don't like you and you're not friends with me anymore is very powerful, and it gets results for girls. I don't know that it does with the boys as much because the boys go, okay, and walk away. But with girls, the feelings are a lot closer to the skin.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what can we do?
Well, obviously, the kids need to learn, like, kind of both sides. The kid that's using that behavior needs to learn, okay, there's other things I can do instead. If this kid doesn't want to play this particular thing, I can go find someone else who does.
Yeah.
Maybe some other coping strategies.
Yeah.
And also different things that they could say, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
To be more maybe like persuasive or something, or to negotiate, like to say, okay, well, you don't want to do this right now, but how about if I do what you want to do for a little while, then we'll do what I want to do. But the truth is they're so young, and at that age, it's just a lot of times kids just don't really do that type of thing. I mean, so...
But I would think, one of the things we talk about on the show is that we rehearse things with our kids who are on the autism spectrum. And I think sometimes it sounds like, well, that's a weird thing. And yet you and I rehearse things. We rehearse what we're going to say. Sometimes if I have to make a really difficult phone call, I'll call a friend and talk it through with them and say, this is what I'm thinking about saying. And that's rehearsal.
Yeah.
And it may, and I will say that to my husband. I have to make this difficult phone call, and I have to say this, and I'm not going to want to say this, so I'm going to practice saying it to you, and saying no, that's not going to work. And we always laugh about it, but then when I'm in the moment, it's not the first time saying it, and it's easier.
Right. Yeah. So having them figure out what they can do in these situations in advance, come up with some ideas, and then unfortunately, to get kids to do stuff, they need consequences.
Yeah.
So providing, you could go on the positive side of things and provide some sort of reinforcer or whatever for handling it correctly.
Yeah. And that's, sometimes harder because we don't always know all the times that they've handled it correctly.
I know.
But if you catch them doing something and doing it correctly, make sure that you pour on the praise for those kinds of social things. Would you put a consequence, a negative consequence?
I mean, honestly, like me as a parent, if that was all I could do, because I don't have access to the data, but I get to find out every time the child did something wrong, because, you know, that's usually what we'll find out from teachers is when our children misbehave, then I probably would put something in place,
And because at this point in time, the social losing the friendship isn't as immediate, I would think it would not automatically, later on, it might be that this child would go, I want to stop doing that because I've connected that with I lose the friend over it.
Yeah.
But at this point, it sounds like it's probably too distanced apart and they're too young for them to catch up on that.
Yeah.
Difficult stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I would think with a neurotypical child too, talking through and saying, has anybody ever said this to you?
Yeah.
And how did it make you feel?
That's what I was thinking as well, is getting them on that side of things. And just saying that would really hurt your feelings if someone said that to you.
Absolutely. Okay, I have another question that somebody is coming from a family who's a card family. Well, they're about to be a card family. Our family recently moved to the state of Arizona in order to obtain services for our child at the new card facility in Chandler. That's some devotion. People who will move to be where they can get their child help. I gotta salute you. Currently, our child is 3 years of age with an ASD diagnosis. He is minimally verbal and is able to imitate. And we know last week that you talked to us about how important that is. He thinks in numbers, letters, shapes, colors, and labels, but doesn't know how to play with kids or communicate other than sometimes saying hi. My question, while we are currently in the intake process with CARD, do you recommend an integrated preschool through our school district, or should we wait until our son is officially in CARD and has one of your therapists that can shadow him in a private preschool? And it does, for people who are listening to this, there is a period of time that it takes to do an intake process. And it can be anywhere from 2 to 4 months to get through that process and get services started. It's a reality. I know CARD has worked really hard to shorten that period of time, but there is a component of it that CARD does not have control over that's usually tied to funding sources. We see that as CARD made it faster for CARD to be able to handle it, the insurance companies made it so that it's longer. And it's one of those things that it comes under the heading of things we can't change.
Right.
Hard. And you want to be productive during that time. But what do you think? Do you feel like going to school, or?
From what it sounds like, once the child starts the CARD services, you're planning on putting your child into a private preschool and with a CARD aid.
Yeah.
And so now you're trying to decide, what do I do until that? And I also don't really know the length of time you're going to be waiting, and you could end up waiting longer than you actually think, so you should be prepared for that as well. So when making that decision, I would just look at what are my other options. If he's not going to an integrated preschool, what is he doing with his time, and is what he would be doing with his time more beneficial to him than what he can get out of the integrated preschool.
Okay.
So go visit the integrated preschool, see what it would be like, what his day would be like, how much attention he would get from the staff, if you think he's going to be successful or not, because also going into these new environments can be stressful for the children. So you will create a little stress for him maybe perhaps in the beginning, but he will eventually also get over that. And so will it be worth it? And I would just weigh all of those things.
Yeah,
what are your thoughts as a parent?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm wondering if you are planning on putting them in a public school with a CARD aid, or if you're planning on going to doing center-based because he's 3. It may be, I would think, especially for me, because the verbal skills are not where you want them to be, that I would be pushing, and this is me and I don't know your child, I would be pushing for that 40-hour program that gets him ready to go to school. So if it were me right now, I would be focusing on getting the CARD assessment done, because that's the portion that the skills assessment done, because that's the portion that's on you that has to get done before everything can take place. I would put my energy into that and starting to do a couple of the IBT trainings and working really hard with your child. If it were me, I would start with compliance and do the IBT training on compliance and start figuring out what you have to do to get to good compliance with your child and focus my energies on that.
So you would use your time actually trying to like do a little bit of ABA with your child.
Yeah, I would get myself educated, because if you're planning on doing the center-based system, once you do the card intake, they're going to tell you what their recommendation is for your child, but I'm guessing because they're 3 and the verbal skills are not there, that they're going to want to be as intense as possible. And I know for my son, when he was 3 and wasn't talking, we didn't have the option for center-based. We only had in-home, and we shot for that 40 hours of ABA in-home. And that year, from when he was 3 to 4, where my school wanted him to go to school with other kids and said how important it was that he socialize, and CARD said to me, it's important that he be ready before that. That year that we took, that he did that intensive ABA, is the year that made all the difference. All the difference. At the end of that year, he was ready to go to school with those kids. He was talking, he was ready to be in that environment, and he could fly.
Yeah.
It was a hard year, and I questioned myself every minute of every day and said, am I doing what's right? Am I screwing this up? Have I really blown this? But once we got to that year and I looked back at where we'd been and where we got to, I have no regrets on that year. That was the greatest year of our lives.
Yeah, what I'm gathering from what you're saying is you chose not to have him go to school so he could just do as many hours of ABA as possible.
Yeah.
From the description of the question, it sounds like
They don't have that
school
yet.
is going to be happening even once CARD therapy starts, because it says, should I put him in an integrated preschool now, or should I wait and put him in a private school once CARD hours start? But if you can get 40 hours or 30 hours a week of CARD and you don't have time for preschool, I wouldn't say that's the biggest issue right now at this young age of 3. I would agree with you. But I don't know how many hours you're getting, so if you do have that extra time, it's good for the socialization for him to probably go to school with a CARD aid.
Yeah.
But if it's a CARD aid, that's again CARD hours, so maybe those hours, instead of being an aid, could be spent doing one-on-one. So.
And I think in the center-based system, your child gets the benefits of interacting with other kids, but gets the benefit of that intensive one-on-one ABA. I wish we'd had the center-based system, because not only is it great for our kids socially, and it's great for them because they're getting that intensive one-on-one ABA, it's great because parents get to still work, but parents need to be aware of the fact that you have to run twice as hard to catch up because you won't be there for the sessions, and you cannot afford to not learn what they're doing in those sessions.
Yeah.
So you have the ability to work, but it means you're going to have to work twice as hard in the hours off.
Yeah. I mean, if it were me, I would just do as many hours of one-to-one ABA as possible, and then when they're not in ABA, I would supplement play dates and other things to get social interaction.
Okay. We're so out of time. We've gone over because I was having so much fun talking to you and looking at this fabulous zebra thing you have going on. We thank you so much, and we're going to take a break now and go to the A Word. It's an ongoing documentary being made by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. We get to drop into his family, see how this intensive behavioral intervention is working with him and with the growing family. He's got a new sister, new behaviors, he's learning new things and challenging in new ways because he's growing. It's all good. Take a look. This is the A Word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack.
Jack Riley.
He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
Hi, Jessica. Jessica's daddy. That's right. Who's this? Who's this? Bobby. And who's that? Daddy.
Who's that?
Over there? Who's that? She's him.
And I totally think he's just aware of a lot of things now. People's names.
How's the behavior team doing with the inflexibilities?
He's still a big control guy. He still wants it the way he wants it.
In sessions, he was very, he'd get very upset.
And he gets upset fast, like for reasons that didn't used to upset him. He gets upset fast, and then once he's upset, everything upsets him.
Were they really long?
But it was a good half hour, the whole tantrum, which is long for him. Really long.
go.
And he would just get so upset.
Yeah, everyone tells us, it's not unexpected. He's 3 and blah blah blah. But
So we get it. We know it.
still, it's harsh. Yeah, he's 3, but he's our 3-year-old.
Tell me a vehicle. Good job. Tell me another vehicle. Airplane is a vehicle. Yay. Okay, 2 more. Okay. Tell me a food. Pancake is a food.
Yeah.
Tell me another food. Tell me another one. Cereal bar is a food.
Yeah.
I thought he said zebra. Okay, Jack Riley. Yes. Good job. Tell me an animal.
What's that?
Tell me one more time. What's an animal?
Rhinoceros.
Rhinoceros.
Oh, okay, it's an animal. Tell me another animal. I know. Tell me another one. Oh, here are your shoes. What animal is that? Froggy is a what? No, frog is a arrow. Good. So tell me another animal. Rhinoceros is an animal, and tell me another one. Pancake. No, look at me. No, look at me. There you go. Thank you. Pancakes are not animals, silly.
There's a clue from it.
Pancake. Yeah, and I don't mind if he looks around to like get clues, get hints. That's totally fine. Yes, I've been running sessions a little bit more like that lately, just because his behaviors have been really high. Just like if we're jumping on the bed or dancing, I'll stop for a minute and ask him like 3 or 4 questions, and then we'll just keep dancing or whatever we're doing. Let me probe through some stuff real quick.
What are you going to be probing?
Actions. So I just want to see if he already knows it, then I won't even bother introducing it. Give me kissing. Oh, good. What are the kids doing? He's kissing. Oh, they're kissing. Can you show me kissing? Oh, good job. Give me cleaning. Okay, good. What's the girl doing? She's cleaning. She's cleaning. Good job. Water. Okay, one more. Can I have it? One more. Give me crying. What's the baby doing? She's babying. What's she doing? What's the baby doing? She's wah-wah. She's wah-wah? She's crying. She's crying. Oh, okay. Maybe we'll do crying. He's kissing. He's kissing. What about this one? What's she doing there? She's cooking. Oh, she's cooking. Okay. And what's this one? What's she doing? She's crying. Oh, okay. So basically, he knows all of them. All right, cool. All right. What are they doing? She's studying. They're what? They're cooking. Oh, they're cooking. Good job. Lots of cooking. Lots of cooking. Mom is cooking? Lots of cooking. Lots of cooking? Oh, okay. Cool. All right. All done. Thank you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're here the day before Halloween and celebrating hard. That was the A word that you just watched. I want to encourage you to use this tool in whatever way works for you. They have their very own YouTube channel. Please check out this series and use it to help you to get what you need to get, what progress you need to get, whether it's to show it to a relative and say, this is the intervention that we're doing. So when you come to our house for Thanksgiving, we'll be asking you to participate in this or in that, or not do this or not do that. Use it to help yourself to know the arc of ABA. So when you're having that day when you go, I don't really get it, I don't know why they're doing this, that you remind yourself there's a place we're getting to, or a way in which we're getting to it that we know that works. So again, check them out on their very own YouTube page. We had a question that came in from somebody last week that I hadn't had a second yet to address, that somebody wanted to know what kinds of things we still do with our son. And you mentioned in your question, although I cannot find it here, okay, there were two different questions that came in. What do I give for treats? And is xylitol or stevia okay? And how long do we have to be on the yeast-free diet? And how long was my son on the yeast-free diet? And what else do we still do with our son? So I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest of this. Different kids, everybody is different. So please don't think that you need to follow exactly in my footsteps, because chances are your child's ecosystem is different than my child's ecosystem, right? So each child is individual. But for my son, what we've learned over the years is that he is very yeast reactive. And how we began to see that when he was very little was that we called him, kiddingly, we thought it was hilarious, the little drunken elf, that he would act like a drunkard. And if you smelled his breath, it smelled like brandy. And if you smelled his head and his feet, it smelled like yeast. Like you had just driven by a bakery and they had active yeast and had the bread growing. And he would just giggle and crack himself up so hard that he would roll off the couch and fall on the floor because he was laughing at nothing. He was a drunk, but he was a happy drunk, a happy little drunk elf. But we couldn't get him to focus. It was like trying to teach somebody who was constantly in their cups, right? And we began, we changed his diet a little bit, because we also noticed at that point in his diet, we'd already made him GFCF, because we saw that worked for our child. And I know, and I tell you all on a regular basis, that is not the case for all children. It isn't, but I saw that clearly with our child. And one of the great, horrible things that happened, because I would never have done it, but somebody by accident gave him wheat. And I didn't know it. And there was a huge regression, and I was despondent, thinking, what on earth are we going to do? Why did this happen? We've been so good. Apparently that gluten-free diet doesn't work. And it was just getting ready to bag the whole thing, because it is time-consuming and difficult. And when somebody at the facility, the YMCA where my child had been put into daycare, right preceding the total regression, one of the workers came to me and said, I want you to know that they fed him pretzels. And you always put a safety pin with a tag saying, don't feed him anything. There are food allergies. And I don't know what happened, but I saw him change. And I want you to know that they fed him pretzels. And thank God for that young man, so that I knew, okay, clearly there is something that happens when my son eats wheat. And I'm allergic to wheat. So that is not shocking to me. And by the way, when I eat wheat, I'm inconsolable, and I'm angry with the world. So I engage in challenging behavior when I get slipped some wheat. So that made sense to me. I'm also allergic to milk, and that's the bane of my existence. But the GFCF diet works for my son and is very helpful for him. We didn't do things like HBOT. We did some biomedical stuff that was very specifically tailored to him after testing showed that was what he needed. He does have some issues with his methylation process. We did eventually use the methyl B12 shots with great success for us. A lot of parents report a big bang for a buck. Many do not. It's something you have to talk about with your doctor, but we did see that. We aren't currently using them, but I am talking about going back to them. And we do a low yeast diet. That is one of the biggest things that we continue to do. My son does not have refined sugar. Over the years, we've been able to let him have more fruit, because there was a period of time when he could have just the minimal amount of fruit to make sure that he got the nutrients that he needed to have. And that's so important that you find that balance. But treats for my son tend to be fruit. He loves fresh fruit. And he also, there are some bars that you can get that are completely non-GMO, GFC, organic, and there are a few that have he's allergic to almonds. There are a few that don't have almonds in them, but there are a few that don't, and that's a big, huge treat for him. And I've mentioned that getting to go through the drive-through at In-N-Out, he gets a protein burger that's wrapped in, it's a beef burger, but it's wrapped in lettuce so that there's no bun, and he gets it with lettuce and tomato, and he gets an order of the fries at In-N-Out, which are GFCF because they cut them right there. You can watch them cut the potatoes, and they drop them in the oil, and the oil is only used for the potatoes. That's a big, huge treat for him. He loves gluten-free pizza, that there are more and more places that we can get it from. But in terms of a candy sort of thing, he really prefers, like for this week for Halloween, I got him fresh raspberries. They're what's in season, they're organic, and he was thrilled. This is the big excitement for him, that he got to have raspberries all this week. I asked him if he'd like me to make some pumpkin cookies, which I would sweeten with a maple syrup, which his system handles a little bit better, but not that much better. So we have to make sure that he doesn't have very many of those. And he said he'd prefer to have raspberries. And that's a wonderful, healthy thing. As I mentioned before, when we do Halloween, he goes and he gets the candy. He told me yesterday that he would like to donate his candy. At school, they're having a big deal where they're donating it to send to the troops, along with letters and cards that are stationed in other places, and he's thrilled to do that. But he did ask, could he still do, he gets to trade it, the Lego fairy comes. I think the Steam fairy's coming this year, but he would like to give his candy to the troops, and I said I didn't think that that was a problem at all. I thought we could work that out. He doesn't miss it. He doesn't miss it at all. I had to give him a cough drop the other day that was a honey-sweetened cough drop that there was no sugar in, and he didn't know what to do with it. I had to teach him how to suck on a cough drop because he had no idea. I found that very interesting, that his life has not been tainted by the sugar, as my life was tainted by the sugar. I really, maybe sometime down the line he's going to find sugar and lose his mind and delve into it, but I don't think he's missed it. And he's a very healthy, happy young man. And I do think that he notices even now that if he eats too much sugar, it's harder for him to concentrate. And I'm talking about the fruit sugar. If he has too much fruit, hard to concentrate. So, we take these things as they come. In any case, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and we're going to wade through as many of the questions that you guys have sent in as we can possibly get through. And I understand he's in costume, so fasten your seatbelts. It's going to get interesting. Stick with us.
When Maddie was diagnosed, I'll be honest, I was very ignorant on what autism was. I knew that autism was basically something that hit boys at the age of 2 to 3. They shut down, and sometimes you think of the typical Rain Man movie. And with Maddie, she was doing all the same signs and symptoms of a typical child with autism spectrum disorder.
Stand up.
She didn't even acknowledge us coming into the room. She had barely any eye contact. She didn't interact with her sisters. She didn't really do anything. She just basically lined up her toys, and that was about it. We have a team of 7 volunteers, or 8 now. We have 8 volunteers, including my husband and I. And I'm the team leader, and so I do all the curriculum and get everything ready each week.
Jana was downstairs until 11 o'clock at night working on curriculum, going through 2 different textbooks. And then we, as a group, meet on Monday nights, and we would go through what the curriculum was from Jana. And a lot of times we would go, well, how exactly do you do that? How do you sit her at the table and do this trial base? Well, what Skills has done for us, it's taken that away from Jana trying to figure out the curriculum for one. She can go down, or even our laptop, and she can sit down, and through all these questions, it comes up with the different programs.
At least for me, it was a relief off my shoulders. I was worried that I might be missing something, missing a curriculum that maybe she needs to know, where Skills, they have every possible thing your child needs to know from 0 to 7. They have a program for that.
What noise is this? Good job!
Every program that we did with her, I knew it was specific for what she needed to learn. Because before Skills, it was a lot of, okay, well, is that really age appropriate for a 2-year-old? You know, because it's not generalized. It's anywhere from 0 to 7. This is what your child needs to know in most manuals you'll find. But for this, okay, yep, she should be learning this. And no, she's not 4 yet. She doesn't need to know that yet.
We are so fortunate that Jana was able to attend a conference put on by CARD that opened the door for skills, and that there's no looking back for us.
We started using the program in November, and it seemed like by January something just clicked, and she has completely kind of came out of her fog that she was in for quite a while.
I have never read a documented case on any child that has not benefited anything from applied behavior analysis, and now with this new skills and being, you know, like the E version of ABA, I can't imagine it doing anything harmful to their child. It's nothing but exponential growth for us.
To see her now, it just blows us away. I mean, we call her our little miracle child because in 7 months' time, she's just blossomed into this normal, functioning child, and suddenly, we joke about it all the time, like suddenly we have twins.
If you're even thinking about doing it, do it. Because the absolute worst thing you can do is do nothing at all. And even if you use this program and it's just a single mom or a single dad working in the evenings with their child, this program is going to benefit them. It's going to show you where they are, it's going to show you where they need to go, and it's going to show you what skills and how to get there. It is an online book on how to help recover your child.
Well, welcome back to Autism Live. We are joined right now by Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who you crack me up. This is the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. You have to love a gentleman who would be willing to dress up like this, because you know that our kids love this. This is just absolutely
It does get a good reaction from the kids, yeah.
And adults too, I'm sure.
That's actually, yes. People just immediately call me Tigger. It's cool.
Okay, I was saying to Dr. Najdowski, it's so fun. It's so fun to work around people in some contexts that work with children, because you retain your sense of fun and play. And I've seen that over the years at CARD, that you guys are always willing to rise to the occasion, and there is no sense of, oh, we have to, you know, just because I'm a doctor, I have to behave in this way.
Not at all.
I love that about all of you. I think it's wonderful, and you look fabulous, I gotta say. We thank you for joining in the spirit of things. I have my witchy poo hat that I keep taking it off.
Very good. There we go.
Yes, so we can be. It is a great hat, and this is what I usually trick or treat in with my son. I might be something else here on the show, but I trick or treat in this because I can take it off and it's not a big deal. My son gets a big thrill out of it, and people always ask me what I am, and I say I'm a Bubba Witch. Which is what most autism moms have to revert to at some point in time, being a Bubba Witch, which is code for a different kind of witch.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay. Got it.
So in any case, thrilled that you are here, and despite the lovely costume, for those of you who are just joining us, Dr. Tarbox is a brilliant board-certified behavior analyst. He is the head of research and development at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. He is the director of the Autism Research Group, and he is an expert who treats individuals with autism. And we respect him greatly, and even more because of the Tigger costume. Okay, so we have so many questions that we didn't get through yesterday, and questions that we got in today. Okay, so I want to start with, we've had a mom who's been writing us talking about a son who's on the spectrum who is a little bit obsessed with wanting to cut hair. So she now refers to herself as the hair cutting mom, and I hope she's watching, because we we've had an adult on the spectrum write in who says that they also are sharing this.
Interesting. Okay.
So they wrote in, said, I don't know why until now I stim more at night to the point where I don't feel relieved until midnight. But I feel that it's 8 p.m. and that it's weird sometimes. The stim is bad, sometimes self-injurious, cutting their own hair.
Okay.
I have tried hats, hiding everything that can cut. What are your thoughts on this, and what should I try? I'll admit I have anxiety, added at night. I'm remembering things that are on my bucket list also that sometimes things that happened bad during the day, and that they said, I know nothing about sleep and dreams. So I don't know whether that means that you're having trouble sleeping, and having trouble getting to that REM stage of sleep. So we've been talking about the hair cutting and channeling it to something positive, but this individual is talking about it as something that's really haunting them, to the point that they consider it self-injurious behavior, cutting their own hair.
Okay.
So let's talk about that.
Yeah, really interesting. And, I think, and I should, disclose that I'm not, I don't treat OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. I'm not a clinical psychologist. I'm a behavior doctor. So it's not really my area of specialty. However, I do help a lot of folks on the spectrum, both adults and children, manage their own behaviors better and reach goals that they value that involve changing their own behaviors. And so it sounds like this kind of fits in that paradigm. And I guess, one of the most important things for us all to realize is that there's this myth in our culture that our thoughts and our obsessions force us to do things. And so it's the most common thing that's believed by folks who have obsessive behaviors and obsessive thoughts. They believe that I'm thinking about it so much, and I want to do the behavior so much, and I'm obsessing on it so much that I have to do it. Eventually, I have to do it. So there's a sort of causal link between obsessing in your mind and then having to do the outward behavior. Well, it turns out it's actually not true. I mean, there isn't a shred of scientific evidence that shows that our thoughts make us do stuff. In fact, what the science is showing us more and more these days is that our thoughts are just another thing that we do. And it feels like they make us do stuff, but they actually don't. They're just another thing that we do, and they're another part of our environment that we're experiencing. They can be extremely challenging to deal with and extremely upsetting and frustrating and haunting, especially if they're obsessive enough, but they don't make you do stuff. So it's sort of an interesting, and you can't kind of just convince someone of that, but maybe take my word on it for now, and then think like, because one thing that we do a lot is we think, well, I'm thinking about this so much that eventually I'm going to have to do it. So I got to get those thoughts under control. I got to stop thinking about this, right? If only I could stop myself from thinking about cutting my hair, then maybe I'll be able to actually control the behavior. Well, there's actually really good evidence to show the opposite, that the harder you try not to think about something, the more you're thinking about it. Yeah. And there's really no way to get out of that.
I think of that as the pink elephant in the room. When people say, don't think about a pink elephant,
right.
Stop thinking about a pink elephant. And of course, in that moment, we all think about a pink elephant.
Of course we do. There's no way around that. And especially when the things that you're thinking about are anxiety provoking, it just makes it that more difficult to intentionally stop yourself from thinking about it. Yeah. So it turns out a much more successful approach is to actually just accept those thoughts. Like, yeah, okay, it's the evening, that's when I'm the most anxious, I'm probably going to think about cutting my hair pretty much the whole evening. There's no way to get out of that. So okay, I'm going to do that, and that's going to hurt. It's not going to feel good, and I'm not going to enjoy that, and it is going to make me feel weird, and it is going to make me feel crazy, and I can't make it go away. So then once you let go of trying to stop your thoughts or control your feelings and thoughts, then you can sort of ask yourself, well, what do I want to do then, right? I can't escape that. I can't stop that. So what do I want to do? Mm-hmm. And it's time to pick 2 or 3 or 5 things that you really value, where the outcome of those behaviors really matters to you, and choose to do them while you're also having the difficult thoughts. Does that make sense?
It totally does. Totally makes sense. And I've shared before on the show that I have been diagnosed before with OCD and even panic disorder. And, I would love to say that I have no elements of OCD and I never feel any anxiety. That's not the truth. But I've been taught through therapies ways of languaging it and doing exactly the kinds of things that you're talking about and reminding myself while I'm choosing other things to do, has this ever happened before? Have I ever felt this feeling before? And did anything bad happen as a result?
Right, that's great. I love that. Right.
No, I got through it before, so I'm going to get through it this time. And what that does is it removes the thoughts and the feelings from the anxiety. And once the anxiety is removed from the picture, I can deal with whatever is happening and even laugh about it with myself and going, oh, okay, that's what that is. Oh, all right.
Right.
And in some respects, have a conversation with myself, really, about, oh, look, there's that thought again. Not useful to me right now, so I'm going to put it over there. I'll come back to you.
Yeah.
I'm going to focus on this.
Yeah, and pick something and say, you know, maybe it's going for a walk. You know, maybe it's engaging in some kind of hobby, whether it's knitting or art or you know, exercise, whatever it is. But just pick something that you care about that matters to you and do it.
And that's hopefully something that's healthy. Let's not pick up something that isn't healthy.
Right, and so it's worth mentioning, like eating a tub of ice cream or drinking a whole bunch of alcohol or something like that is not, that's going to make you feel better in the moment, but that's not what I'm talking about when I say choose something that you value. I mean, choose something that will produce an outcome that you value. So if you want to be in better shape, go exercise. If you want to learn how to play a musical instrument, practice the instrument. You know, whatever it is, an outcome that matters to you, choose some behaviors that will produce that outcome that you can do right now.
Absolutely, and it couldn't be said better with the Tigger hand. It's too funny.
Pause.
All right.
Excuse me. Pause.
Pause. I'm so sorry. What was I thinking? All right, I'm going to continue on if you're okay. Can we go right into the next question? Okay. Hi, Shannon and Dr. Tarbox. My son has been with CARD for 1 year, 40 hours. He will be 4 in a few days. At 3, he had his IEP, and I decided not to take what the school district offered, so I pushed for a reassessment since all of his goals were met by CARD. He is learning a lot, but still has many deficits. He's scoring really high on all tests.
Great.
The IEP is next week, and the supervisor will attend with me. My concern is that as he scores high on the assessments, he can't answer a simple "how was your day?" question. The psychologist visited me today and said that they're having a hard time deciding, since he scored so high, should I be concerned if he won't qualify for services? If he doesn't qualify, what should I do? I'm happy that he's scoring high, but I know he's still a long way from okay. Any advice will be great. And this is the reality of when your child does well.
That's right.
Being worried that your child is going to have their services cut before they get to the end point.
Right.
It's like you can't even imagine that in the beginning, but once you see how well they're doing, you want them to get to the end point. And we see this as a huge issue, especially with insurance companies, but also with school districts. It's a very real issue. So talk to us a little bit about what you suggest.
Sure, absolutely. And first of all, it's probably a good problem to have. I mean, if you have to have a problem, and we pretty much all do, it's great that your child is doing so well and making so much progress and scoring really high on these tests. So I think the really important thing to emphasize is functional ability to get through his life on a day-to-day basis. And so that judgment needs to be made by clinicians who are experts. It's not just test results. Test results are important, but they don't always get at things like actual ability to engage in conversation with peers. And so that's a major thing to stress, but it also depends on the funding agency. And it sounds like maybe she's talking about school district.
We are talking about what the school is funding in this moment in time. And she does go on to say she said, this is the continuation for the IEP question. I was also getting my son's speech and OT through my insurance, and speech just discharged him due to scoring high.
Okay.
Now that offends me because
he can't answer a question of how was your day.
So they're not including within that speech pragmatic language.
Right, exactly.
Maybe they're being able to make the sounds.
That's right, yeah.
And so I will say, just between all of us, I kind of want to find the person who discharged them and kick them with a pointed shoe.
Well, it's entirely possible. Each speech therapist specializes in something different, just like every behavior analyst does. It's entirely possible that they don't specialize in pragmatic language. That's not what they do. And they don't see, and maybe they don't realize there's a need for it. Maybe they just work on articulation and other things. I'm not sure.
But you can go in and fight and say, I want pragmatic language for my child. How unconscionable of you to discharge my child from speech and say that you are not on the hook for paying for speech services when my child, there's a whole range of pragmatic language, and you better bring an expert in here and get it signed back up.
And honestly, pragmatic language is probably more important than just being able to make sounds. I mean, that's the actual social use of language. in your real life. That's what actually makes a difference for you.
Absolutely. And you can fight for that. But we do see this happening. I have to be very careful what I say, but I had a similar fight with my school district because there were people within my school district who decided that my child was doing so much better than other kids that within their pool of money, he should not get the services. And what I would always say to people is, your pool of money and how you decide to do with it is your business. I'm here to advocate for my child. I will advocate for all children in other ways on other days, but at this IEP, I'm responsible for my kid.
That's right.
And they are not allowed. Make sure you have a tape recorder at this IEP. They are not allowed to compare whether your child needs services more than another child. That's against the law. If you get that on a tape recorder, you're done. You got what you wanted. They will settle.
Yeah.
But they are not allowed to do that and say, well, your child's doing so much better than this child. We're saving the service. No.
Yeah, federal law does not state that the school district needs to give your child an appropriate education if they have enough money for it, and only if there aren't too many other kids that need it. It's federal law states it's the public school district's responsibility to provide your child with an appropriate education. So if you have experts saying that pragmatic language and some of these other more advanced skills are part of an appropriate education for your child, then they're on the hook for that.
Right.
It should be in the IEP.
And I had somebody tell me, and of course there wasn't a tape recorder, but she said to me, well, if we give that to your child, then the whole school won't get computers for this year.
Wow.
And I said, really? You did not just say that to me, did you? Honestly, you've decided that other children should get computers rather than my child get what's appropriate? Really?
Wow.
Yeah,
they need to train their staff better.
They will say things to you, and they'll good cop, bad cop it in some. But you're there to advocate for your child. Make sure you have a tape recorder. Make sure that you are on your best behavior. But back to the whole thing about ways that we can fight and make sure. So she can say, my child needs pragmatic language.
Absolutely.
And have you tested my child for pragmatic language? Because if your child can't respond to a question, how was your day? There's no way that he tested out on pragmatic language.
Right.
But other things that you can be arguing, one off the top of my head, that under that FAPE, the Free Appropriate Public Education Act, it says that your child has a right to be taught things that are curriculum appropriate for where they are in terms of skill level, but that they also need to work on skills beyond educational, so they're helping them to be able to get a job later on.
Right.
So
That's a good point.
they cannot say that your child does not need services if he is not able to answer a question, how was your day?
Right. I mean, they can say it, but you don't have to settle for it.
Well, they can't settle for that. If they can, they have to be able to prove that your child does not need those services.
Right.
Or you have to prove to them that he does, and ask for that pragmatic language score. I can't imagine that they wouldn't have done that, a pragmatic language test.
Oh no, it's entirely possible that they didn't do that.
Then request
it's more than possible. It's highly likely that they didn't do a pragmatic language assessment.
Other things that you can argue for a child about to be for?
Well, and again, it sort of depends on the funding source, but right now, the laws, and depending on what state you're in, but if you do have insurance mandate in your state, the laws generally state that insurance needs to pay for medically necessary treatment for autism. So if your son's deficits are still deemed medically necessary for intervention, then insurance companies should be paying for it. It doesn't matter that he's scoring really high, but it's a matter of making the case that these deficits are still a medically necessary reason for treatment.
Yeah. And the more that we get insurance involved, I just want to say this, and this is going to sound really negative and cynical, but we know how insurance companies work, and school systems have adopted some of this too, that they will do tests to see who's going to squawk. So if there is a child who's out there who isn't showing huge gains, they're showing gains, but they're not showing huge gains, the insurance company is going to make the argument, we don't know if this ABA is really working for the child because we're not seeing enough gains. And if the parents squawk big and say, he's making gains and and how dare you and whatever, and they feel like there's going to be a fight, sometimes they'll capitulate.
Right.
On the other end of it, if the child is doing so well, they'll go to the parents and say, the child's doing so well, he doesn't need services, because they're expecting the parent's going to say, yay. And if the child goes, my child's going to get services, they're just like our kids. They can tell when we mean no, and when there's a room for wiggle room. When you sit there and say, this is going to happen, they get it.
Yeah, that's really true.
And I know, having been a teacher, that there is a discussion about that they will mark a case and say, this is a case that has the potential to be a lawsuit, so let's find a way to make an equitable settlement. There are other times when they will stamp a case and say, this is a parent who's going to be very vocal, which means we need to take them to court so that we can teach a bunch of people. So you've got to find that mix.
Make an example out of them.
Yes, you've got to find that mix. I'm going to be just vocal enough that they're going to see that I'm not going away, but I got to make it look like I do not appear on shows and talk about how these people are doing bad things. I missed that lesson early on, but it's okay. You can learn from my mistakes, but let them know, you know, this is what's going to happen, and I'm going to be on this. Don't let them think that they can give up on your child because he's done so well.
Right.
And don't let them think that they can give up on your child because your child is taking a little bit more time. Don't let them get away with it.
And by the way, 1 year of ABA for a young child with autism is not the most scientifically proven approach. Really, the research shows 2 or more years is what's necessary.
Yeah.
Some children are done in 1 year, but very, very rarely. Even the highest responders to treatment typically take at least 1 to 2 years to really finish out.
And the last thing that I will say on this is, you know, you don't have to disclose to people testing that you have done. I need to be careful what I say, but when we had GEM tested at CARD, we did not disclose the results of those tests to anybody unless we hand-picked, cherry-picked, and said, you can look at the results of this test, but we wouldn't show them the rest, and that is within your right.
That's your right.
You do not have to, so I would advise you to talk to your supervisor at CARD and hand-pick and cherry-pick the studies that CARD has done where your child still needs to make improvement. Bring those to the IEP with you, and mum's the word on the rest of them. They're going to have done their own tests, and they're going to have their own results. But if they see that you've got your ducks in a row, they may not argue with you too much.
That's right.
I get hepped up, Dr. Tarbox. I get hepped up because I just feel like somebody's going to take away something from one of our kids that they need, and it makes me nuts.
Well, it happens every day.
It does happen every day. But you have to show them, this is what I was talking about the other day. We had a clinical psychologist who specializes in just treating autism parents. And I was saying to him, you know, I'm so used to being in warrior mode that, you know, I'm in line at the grocery store and somebody says something and I'm like, listen, you know, we have to learn how to temper that. But in this case, don't temper it. Get your Norma Ray on. We get it done. All right, we got to take a break, but then we're going to come back with more questions with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. Stick with us.
Hi, this is Lisa Ackerman, back again, Taka Facts. Wanted to share with one of the most popular questions that we get, and that is, do children with autism recover? I don't know how to say it loud enough. Yes! Scream it from the mountaintops. We've seen it and witnessed it for over a decade at Taka. Thousands of children that lose their diagnosis. They become indistinguishable from their peers following therapeutics and medical intervention. And in 2013, the NIH, the National Institute of Health, agreed. They studied children that had an autism diagnosis and did an in-depth analysis, and yes, so showed that children with autism actually can recover. And what I'm so excited about is the odds are in your favor. The study concluded that 10 to 20% of children with autism will recover after intensive early intervention and therapeutics and medical intervention. You may be thinking, wait, 10, 20%? That doesn't seem like a big number. Let me tell you why it is. For decades, we've been told autism is a no hope, nothing you can do. And what we know today is, yes, there is hope. So now that people know that recovery is possible, it's actually an option that can happen for families that, you know, put what they can into the journey and, God willing, get their kid through the other side so they can live their lives in a beautiful way. I'm excited to share with you that recovery is possible. So now we can all shoot for that together.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're going to take another question here for Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. If you're just tuning in, don't adjust your computer. Dr. Tarbox is in a giant Tigger costume, and we're loving it. We're absolutely loving it. We're day before Halloween, and we appreciate that you dressed up and bring your kids in so that they can see Dr. Tarbox as Tigger. This is priceless.
Well, and today is our office's Halloween party. We got all the kids coming in at the Thousand Oaks office, so we're going to do a big trick-or-treating thing and all of that. So everyone's dressed up. The whole office is decorated. It's really
I love that, and I love the fact that the kids get to come in and see you all in costume.
Yeah,
the kids
it'll
that
be
you
fun.
treat. It's very, very fun. Okay, so our next question here. My son frequently seeks approval. Is this okay? He'll say, this is what he'll say. Is this okay? Did I do a good job, etc.? Is this related to being used to reinforcement with ABA, or maybe we weren't reinforcing the right way? The hope is he will be confident and trust in himself without depending on others' opinions. Thank you. And they said great costumes. Yeah, they did a good job. Okay. So, yeah, I love this question, and I'd love to hear the answer too, because my son tends to check in frequently to say, am I getting my reinforcement? Am I on task? Am I doing those things? Yeah. And I would like to know what I need to do to fade that as well.
Yeah, it's a really great question, and it's actually sort of related to a limitation that people who don't actually understand reinforcement and ABA very well often raise as an objection to using positive reinforcement, which is the kid will become dependent on it, or they'll think that it'll ruin their real motivation for doing it, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, most of those potential concerns are not really valid, because if the child's own motivation was going to work good enough to begin with, then we don't use positive reinforcement. We only use positive reinforcement when the kid doesn't have enough of their own internal motivation to do the behavior, right?
Okay.
So we use positive reinforcement to help strengthen that behavior and create that new good habit. And then, yes, we do need to fade it out. We do need to fade it out. So there's a few different strategies here that might be at play. And of course, I don't know your son well enough to know, but it's possible that some of these things that he's doing, these new good behaviors or good habits, really don't require contrived reinforcement anymore. So it might be time to start fading out the reinforcement for those. And even praise, when you think about it, is kind of a form of contrived reinforcement for a lot of us, right? Like your boss doesn't follow you around saying good job, good job, good job all day, right?
I've asked them to, but they just won't do it. It's just so disappointing.
Typical kids hanging out in their family's home. When they're not misbehaving, their parents aren't necessarily saying, I really appreciate that you're not misbehaving right now. They're just they give them a hug every now and then, high five or whatever, but it's not, you can't tell that there's any positive reinforcement going on, right? So yes, it's important to fade or thin out the contrived reinforcement to resemble more of what sort of typically or normally these quotation marks don't work. Quotation pause.
Yes.
What typically, to make your reinforcement system a little bit more resembling what would normally be occurring. So, but first of all, you'd only do that if the reinforcement system right now is working well enough and the good behaviors are strong enough and have become habits. Once that's the case, then yes, time to start fading it out. But you want to do it really gradually, and you want to make sure that that you do it very slowly so that the good behavior doesn't decrease, and you gradually fade towards forms of reinforcement that are more standard. So approval is a lot more, social approval or verbal approval is a lot more sort of typical or normal than an M&M or points or a snack or whatever as a reward. And then another good thing to do is to make sure that, this is one thing that I've seen sometimes. I have no idea if it's the case for this boy, but one thing I've seen is if parents actually don't, and not just parents, but us, ABA folks, if we forget to give praise and approval frequently enough when they don't ask for it, then they'll ask for it more. The kids will ask for it more. So it's possible that when you notice him, when you catch him being good, just mention it. Pat him on the back, say, hey, that's awesome. I really appreciate that. And then, and if you do that enough without him asking you, is it okay, did I do a good job, that might help with that.
Yeah.
It could be related to that. Could have nothing to do with that. It could just be that he's used to this routine of every single thing I do is scrutinized. Is it good or bad? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But those are some tips.
And I always like to think, let's find the most productive way. Jem had to read a poem in class today, and so we've been working with him on it the last couple of nights, and you know, I frequently go into the school and will work on theater things with kids, and there are all kinds of kids. They're like, you know, neurotypical kids, kids with different issues, you know, everywhere. And it's very interesting watching how we get them to do things performance-wise, and how ABA has changed my mind about how we get to those things. But we were making him go through the poem, and each time we had him work on something different. Like one time we had him go through and just work on saying the ends of the words so that, you know, he would be articulating. And he kept checking in, because every time I do this thing with the kids when they're doing something, I'll go like this, I go, ooh, you know, and he kept checking in to see that I was going, yeah, that one was good. And what it led to was really good eye contact, which I also wanted, but I didn't want to have to say that to him.
Right.
And we want, when people are reading something, for them to check in with the audience and make eye contact with them, and it just automatically was making it happen. And when you think about it, how many times when conversations are happening later on in life and things derail, it's because somebody didn't check in to see, is it working?
Right.
So I'm wondering if there's a way that we can morph this, him saying, am I doing this right? Is I getting into the checking in thing?
And you know, I'm glad that you asked that, because as you started to talk, I remembered one more tip, which is fade it to, try to fade the reinforcement to things that are not as obviously reinforcement. So one of them could just be a subtle thumbs up. Well, that again didn't work very well. A subtle thumbs up. One could just be like a little glance like that, or like a wink or something, or you know, like this if you want to make it really big. But not always good job, well done, blah, 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 right? It doesn't have to be vocal. It could be a facial expression, right? And definitely mix it up. That's the other thing is we get, it's good if you're really remembering to reinforce all the time. That's fantastic. But if you're doing it the same way over and over, then that's teaching your kid to seek reinforcement the same way over and over, which is not what we want. We want variability and creativity. And another thing that I forgot to mention was don't reinforce every single behavior. If you want to start fading it out to something more typical, start reinforcing every other behavior, but not in a predictable way, right? Flip a coin, basically, right? And then that starts to look much more natural, and it teaches the child to just tolerate the uncertainty of, okay, I did something, I'm not sure if it's perfect, but you know, I'll find out later, whatever.
Yeah. So fascinating, but again, a quality problem almost.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that means reinforcement is working.
It is. Yeah. Okay, we're almost out of time, so I want to keep going here. Hi, my son, who's almost 5, his new obsession is a hand dryer. Whenever we're out, I'll tell him we're going to Walmart or Target, etc., and he would say right away, "I need to use the bathroom." I make him use the bathroom before we leave the house, but sometimes we're out for more than 2 hours, and even though he can hold it for like 2 more hours, I let him use it at one of the places we go. He would walk in the bathroom looking for the hand dryer and making sounds like a hand dryer on the napkin holder when there isn't a hand dryer. He would talk about it at the moment too, but the thing that gets to me is that he does not want to dry his hands on it if he is so scared of it, but so obsessed over it. I'm just trying to make sense of, I just don't understand what is the purpose of this behavior. Okay, so it sounds, if I'm reading it right, he's afraid of it, but fascinated by it.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say, and this is before we want to decrease any behavior, we always want to ask ourselves, what is the functional problem that behavior is causing in day-to-day life? And so if you're able to allow your child to go to the bathroom once at the beginning of each shopping trip, and wash his hands or use the bathroom and then play with the hand dryer a little bit or stare at it or whatever, and that whole thing takes maybe 5 minutes each time you go shopping, I would say that's not a problem. It's actually a great idea for your kid to go to the bathroom as soon as you get to a store to make sure they don't have an accident, right? Or you don't end up having to go to the bathroom too badly while you're driving home or driving wherever else. So if you can just let them do it a little bit, it's fine. Even if it's a weird obsession, everyone has weird obsessions. It's not a big deal to do a weird obsession just a little bit, as long as it doesn't cause a problem. However, if it's getting so frequent and so obsessive that you can't even get your shopping trip done because he's always bolting to the bathroom, then that might be when it's time to start considering maybe thinking about some procedures to decrease it or to get it under control a little bit.
Okay. All right, good point. I think sometimes we get into such a mode of I got to work on everything, and picking and choosing what we don't have to work on.
Yeah, we get in this mode of like autism equals anything my kid does that's weird, so I have to change anything like that's weird, and that's not the case at all. It's good to be a little bit weird, right?
Okay.
It's just you need a functional level,
said the man
workable,
in the Tigger costume.
Right. We talk about a workable amount of weirdness. Right?
Yes.
If it's a little bit and it's workable, things work, no problem. It's
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to forge on again. Hello, I have a 23-year-old son with high-functioning autism who has been struggling with social skills for years. He's had several therapists, but he still does not know what it means to be friends with someone, much less a girlfriend. I know he wants both. Can you recommend resources I can use to help him with the basics of conversation and friendships? He can read and write, and thanks a lot.
Yeah, so you know, it's sad because for adults on the spectrum, there really are a lot less services available. We actually do work with some folks like that at our center. I don't know where they live; could be anywhere in the world.
Yes.
But there are some services out there, but really not a lot. I mean, there's social skills groups. Usually, those are more oriented towards like adolescents and teenagers. I think there may be some available for adults. There are some workbooks that could be helpful, but reading a book doesn't really teach you how to interact with a person. It can teach you how to think about interacting with a person and talk about interacting with a person and write down how you might interact with a person, but it's not the same as actually doing it. But if she emails you and forward it to me, I can connect her with some recommendations for some books.
Okay.
And some workbooks and websites and stuff like that.
Okay, great. And I will throw some quick websites at you that check out wrongplanet.net. It's a community of people who are on the autism spectrum who talk with each other about these things.
Yeah, that's great.
And Alex Plank, who is sometimes a regular on our show when he's available because he's a very busy young man, does a series of videos where he teaches. There's one in particular that will be of use to your son and to you because Alex himself is very high-functioning Asperger's, and he's a filmmaker, and he did a video on how to flirt with a clinical psychologist there with him, teaching him how to flirt. And
That's great. I haven't seen that. I need to watch that.
It's beautiful. It's really wonderful, and it puts it in very succinct terms about what to say, how long to make eye contact, what to say that's not creepy,
right?
And she says what the other person is thinking on the other end. It's very.
And I would say the majority of the typically developing population could use that too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, like some people are just good at that, and most aren't.
Absolutely. I always refer to, if you haven't seen the movie The Story of Luke, you must. It's available on Amazon, and I think it's on Netflix too. We had the filmmakers and the star, Lou Taylor Pucci, on the show when the film was first coming out. There is a scene when he is standing there with Seth Green, and they're watching two neurotypical people flirt at the water cooler, and Seth Green goes through a whole thing and says, now watch how he does this, and watch what she does, and watch how, this is what you have to learn, you have to know the ins and outs of all this, and this is what's happening in this moment. And I remember when they showed the clip on Conan, and they came back from the clip, and Conan said, I need him to have this talk with me. We all need to know what these rules are. So check out The Story of Luke, but check out Wrong Planet and check out Alex Plank's videos. We're perilously close to being out of time. So I'm going to have you stay there while I address just a couple of quick things. We had some questions come in from families in New Jersey, and you know what I want to do is I want to put you in touch for everybody who's been writing in about everything in New Jersey, because we've had a bunch of questions from New Jersey. New Jersey has some very interesting things happening there, both in ABA and other things, but there is a new hotline that I understand 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And for our New Jersey families, I don't think there's another state where the parents have gotten together in a better way to help and support each other. So if you're in New Jersey, I want you to call 800-4-AUTISM. Connect with the people there, because a lot of the things you guys are asking have to do with New Jersey laws, and you need to be talking to a parent who's already been there and done that in New Jersey to let you know what your rights are. 800-4-AUTISM. That phone line is manned by parents who can help and support you. So we'll get into more specific next week, but I know there are a bunch of questions from New Jersey, and I wanted to give you guys that information. Also want to talk to you a little bit about what's happening next week and in the coming weeks. We've been hinting that we have a project that we've been working on that we're going to begin to unveil for you. That the week after next, the entire week, we're going to have a pledge drive. if you will, where we're going to be asking all of you to participate. I want you to get ready. Here are the things that I need for you to have. I need for you to have a big piece of paper and 3 markers of 3 different colors. That's all you need to have to be able to participate in this pledge drive, because we're going to enlist all of you in this, we're calling it an Autism Act of Love that we're working on. And I need for you to get your kids and your dogs and your grandmother and your sister-in-law's best friend who's down the street who cuts hair. We need to get everybody involved. And what you need to have is paper and markers of 3 different colors. So I want to throw that out to you right now to get those things so that when we unleash and let you know exactly what you're going to do with them, that you're already ready. We need to be in cahoots, but I will give you guys more information before we give the world information. But it's called Autism Acts of Love. You've seen the hashtags a little bit. You've seen little hints that we've given you, but we want you to participate in that so that we can all make a difference. We want this to go as big as it possibly can to help as many people as we can. So Autism Acts of Love. The other thing that I want you to know is that starting on the 18th of November, we are starting our Festival of Toys, and we are planning on giving away more toys than we gave away last year. And the way that you're eligible to win those toys is if you're signed up for our free newsletter. You can get to that on autism-live.com by going up to the little whiteboard up above the screen. There's a little place on the whiteboard where it says join our email list. Click on that, fill out the information, and you will automatically get the newsletter. But you don't want to miss out on this. And if you know other people, and I will say to you honestly, if they are people who are in need and they're looking for some help and support for some toys for their kids that are good, educational, fabulous toys, make sure that they know and get on that list. If you're not on that list, you cannot win. So make sure that you do that. We're really getting down to the bare bones out of time here. So last thing that I want to say is that Halloween is tomorrow. I hope that you find a way for your children to participate in a way that is good for them. And as we talked about earlier this week with everyone, actually, Dr. Grampiche and with Vince Redmond, let go of the expectations. Find the way to get to the fun for your child and for yourself. Enjoy that time with them. We're all the way out of time. Thank you for being here, Dr. Tarbox, and for being in a Tigger costume. I will say goodbye and happy Halloween to you guys. We will see you next week. Until then, give your kiddos a hug for me. Bye-bye for now.